Hello, thank you for joining our 5-minute Bible study today in the book of Colossians. We are in chapter 2, verse 19 today. So if you haven't already, grab your Bibles and go ahead and read the context of what we're looking at today, which would be from verse 16 through verse 23, the rest of the chapter. With that, today let's look at verse 19, which says this: "And not holding fast to the head, from whom the entire body, being supplied and held together by the joints and ligaments, grows with a growth which is from God." Now, we really are at the end of a sentence there, so it's important for us to just kind of look back really quickly at verse 18 to see what this is about. And if we look back at 18, we recognize that the false teachers were doing four things in particular that Paul points out as being incorrect. The first thing was delighting in self-abasement, which we recognize could be either like a physical kind of self-flagellation kind of thing, or it could be a false humility, so self-abasement, bringing themselves down. The second thing was the worship of angels. So they were worshiping angels. The third thing was doing visions that may or may not have been biblical. And the fourth thing was that they were proud of their wisdom. They were inflated without cause by his fleshly mind. So they were proud of their human wisdom. So now we continue with that thought, and we get to this last one. There's a fifth one now. It's right here in verse 19, and it's the biggest one. It's the most important one. And basically in verse 19 it says, "And not holding fast to the head." So we recognize that that head is Jesus Christ. Christ is the head of the church. And so the Colossian church has Christ as its head, as all of our churches do. However, these false teachers were coming in and they were teaching that there was something else that was needed in the church. There was something else that could lead the church. Maybe these false visions that they were having should be leading the church and not Jesus Christ. Maybe it was the other things that they were doing, that you must self-flagellate or self-humiliate yourself so that the church can grow, again, outside of Jesus Christ. So all these things, the biggest problem was this fifth problem, that they didn't have Christ as their head. Church without Christ at the head is not a church at all. It could be a social agency, it could be a great organization, but it is not a church, because a church must have Jesus Christ as its head. So here we find out why that is. They weren't holding fast to the head, and we find out what the head does, why the head is so important. "From whom the entire body, being supplied and held together by the joints and ligaments, grows with a growth which is from God." So as we look at this, we recognize that it's only because we follow Jesus as our head that the rest of the body, that would be the church, the body is the church. So the rest of the body, the church, could actually follow Christ into the direction that God calls us to go. God calls us to do certain things in the neighborhoods he places us in. There's a reason why my church is put exactly where it is. There's a reason why your church is put exactly where it is. And it's not to do things that the culture would want you to do or that man would want you to do, but it's to do the things that Christ wants you to do, because Christ is the head of the church. Now, as Christ is the head of the church, we see what happens. We have the entire body being supplied. So, in other words, if you want that body to grow deeper as well as wider, we need Christ. We might be able to grow wider with great sermons and wonderful music and great programs, but the church will be a mile wide and an inch deep. Without Christ, we can't grow deeper. It's only through Christ that we can truly grow our relationship with God. It's only through Christ that we can truly know who God is. It's only through Christ that our prayers are answered. So Christ has to be at the center of everything. He has to be the head. Once we remove Christ, we can no longer be a unified body. We have to follow one head or the other. We saw that in the Colossian church. We're following Paul. We're following Apollos. You start following different heads. Why? Because you're not following the head, Jesus Christ. And so Paul says that you are held together, joints and ligaments, and you grow. And that growth is a growth that comes from God. So man can't grow the church. You can make it look big, But you know what? It's not really God's church if Christ isn't the head. But if Christ is the head, God will grow the church. We saw that in Acts chapter 2 at the end, that after we see all the things that the new church was doing, being in the Word, praying, fellowship, sharing with each other, we see what they were doing, and God added to their numbers day by day. And that's how God works. God adds to our numbers when we follow Him, put Him as the head, and do what He asks us to do. And so that's verse 19 there. Thank you so much for joining me today for our study in the book of Colossians. Join me again tomorrow as we continue on with this study. If you have any questions, thoughts, or comments, go ahead and put them down at the bottom in the comment section. And until I'm able to get back to you, thank you so much for joining with me. Have a wonderful day, and God bless you.